on the Kaka. I'm Bernard Hickey, and joining us today is Bryce Edwards, a fellow Substacker, but actually also running the Integrity Project. Some great work looking at how our political economy works. Bryce, welcome onto the Hoon.
Kia ora, Bernard.
So tell us about a piece that you've put out today. Again, topical because we're in the last week of the local elections. Could you tell us about, the shape and health of our democracy, if you like, at a local level?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest issues here is the lack of scrutiny of local government in New Zealand. And I think the media, with a few very good exceptions, does not scrutinise the power where it lies in local government. And academics, political commentators as well. I think we fail on this. We're more interested, I think, for some understandable reasons. We're more focused on national politics, on central government, but I think we probably haven't got that balance right, whereby there's still important things that happen at the local level. And I think certain mayors in particular, councils, do actually have a lot of power in some areas, especially around things like zoning and the way our cities are organised. And they're actually really important places in our political system where the wealthy, the powerful can actually have an influence, and it's not really scrutinised or not enough light shone on that. So I guess the piece I was writing today was a bit of a corrective to that, especially from my own point of view of not writing enough, especially about this local election campaign that's going on at the moment.
Yeah, you've shone your light in particular on Wellington to start with.
Yeah.
Could you tell us about the outgoing Tory whānau, the mayor of Wellington, and the incoming current favourite to be the mayor, Andrew Little, and the connections there?
Well, in some ways they're completely different. The main way they're similar is they're on the centre left, if you like. And the thing that I find most interesting about them is both candidates, Tory whānau in 2022, and now Andrew Little in 2025. The person behind them both is a corporate lobbyist of great power in Wellington by the name of Neil Jones. And so, of course, he runs capital government relations. He used to be the chief of staff in the Beehive, or at least for the Labour Party when they were in opposition with Andrew Little when he was the leader, and temporarily for Jacinda Ardern when she became Prime Minister. He was the chief of staff. He then left the Beehive and set up his own lobbying firm. And I think he's a really smart guy, really sort of tapped into a lot of networks. But he takes local government importantly. He pushed Tory whānau to run for mayor, and in fact she was working for him at the time that she ran for mayor. She herself was a lobbyist after working in the Greens and Parliament. She joined his firm and then ran for the mayoralty. But now I don't think that particularly worked out well for Neil. I think he lost faith in Tory whānau, along with a lot of people on the left, frankly. And now he's got a new horse in the race, and that's Andrew Little, who I think there's a pretty strong consensus is going to be the next mayor of Wellington. And I'm sure Neil Jones has been very important in making him the front runner, giving him very strong strategy and campaigning techniques. But of course, it does mean that he's going to be well connected with the new mayor. And I'm sure he's not doing this just out of the charity of his own, volunteering nature. I'm sure to some extent he does support the politics of Andrew Little, but it's also, I think, in the business interests of any lobbyists when they get involved in helping politicians campaign. And so we can only speculate what that might mean. But when a lobbyist has a politician in kind of public office, they then have debts that can be repaid. They have the inside running on lots of different things. So I think we need to be skeptical about that.
Yeah. How could we make this more transparent in some sort of systematic way so that the public, voting public, can understand who's backing who and how much has been, donated to who, and who's regularly seeing who or is connected in any
Yeah.
way.
Look, none of these things are easy. My best answer is to have a media, a sort of a sphere of sort of scrutiny that involves, people on Substack or whoever that are, researching this. But we are very lax in New Zealand in terms of our rules around lobbying in particular. So we don't know who capital government relations clients are. I think there's a bit of research to show there's a bit of property developers, banking, telecommunications, etc. But we don't know specifically who the clients are that are essentially becoming connected with Andrew Little, the new mayor, or who will be the new mayor. So I do think we need a lobbying register of those involved in lobbying for businesses. I think local government needs a lot more transparency in terms of donations. We have some rules around candidates having to declare donations above a certain amount, but it's all very much after the fact. So I'm not meaning to pick on Andrew Little here. It's the same for all of them. We won't know who was backing Andrew Little until after he becomes mayor, or Wayne Brown, or anyone else, unless they voluntarily disclose this. At the national level, of course, we now have rules that if there's any really big donations above $30,000, they have to be pretty much instantly, well, at least within, I think it is 10 days, disclosed to the public. I think we need some real-time rules that we need to know who are giving the big donations to any of these candidates pretty much when it happens.
That process at a national level is managed by the Electoral Commission. Should it be done also at a local level? Because there's some discussion
Oh,
about getting the Electoral Commission to actually do the elections as well.
it's a great question. And the Electoral Commission, they have a certain role in New Zealand politics. They have quite, clearly defined and simple duties. I think there's an argument to extend those out, especially to local government and to run the local elections. I think that's a really strong argument because we're not seeing the councils run their own elections very well. They contract them out most of the time to private companies. I think there's a good reason to have it taken back by a state organisation, but there's also an argument maybe for it all to be restructured. Maybe we need a new part of the state that does this. I'm not even sure the Electoral Commission would want to take on a lot of these rules. If they were, they would need to have a lot more resources, obviously. But yeah, I do think it's probably a no-brainer to extend the donations and political finance side of things to the Commission.
Yeah. When we think of local government, we often think of, local property developers or campaigners, the bins, the pipes, and all of that stuff. It all feels very local. And if you're into international intrigue and national drama, it all seems a bit mundane. But there's been a warning from the NZSIS, the spooks, as we say, that we should keep an eye on what's going on at a local level as well. Could you talk a bit more about some of the risks there?
So it was reported in the Herald yesterday that the Director General, I think it is, of the I'm just checking my notes here. It's the Director General Andrew Hampton of the NZSIS has been warning local authorities that they need to keep a watch out for potential foreign states that might be trying to influence things. So the politicians, the officials, and so forth, and even their families are being told to, keep a watch out for what might seem like normal activity. Could be a foreign state trying to, in some ways, get some influence. He's talked particularly about some of the big assets that governments own in terms of ports, airports, infrastructure. And look, he didn't talk about what particular countries might be involved here. But the subtext, I think, is pretty clear. It's China they're concerned with. There might be some other countries. And of course, New Zealand local government authorities do have a lot of sister city arrangements with other countries. We see councillors and mayors go on lots of trips to China. I think, yes, the SIS are concerned about what that might mean, and just thinks we need a bit more scrutiny. I'm not sort of, really in a position to comment too much on foreign influence. It's not really my field, but I do think we have to be quite sensitive in how we have that discussion. And yeah, it's such an important thing that we should be careful not to impugn other countries, without evidence. And we have to realise that even New Zealand does the same thing in other countries. So it's a reality that states do spy. They do try to get influence on politics in other countries. It's just a reality that we have to be aware of, I think.
Yeah, and then just finally, towards the end of your article, you've called for a comprehensive integrity overhaul, a strengthening of transparency laws. What are we talking about here? Rather than do itsy bitsy inquiries and reports and things, what are you talking about when you say comprehensive integrity overhaul?
Well, like I said, I haven't followed and reported and analysed local government enough in the last few years, but I'm starting to do more so, and I'm seeing there's a lot more conflicts of interest, a lot more, I think, integrity violations, and they're not really taken seriously at the local government level. I think we have more of a spotlight on Parliament and the executive in this country, whereas when there's conflicts of interest, I saw one, for example, just recently, Gisborne District Council, I think it was, their workshops are supposed to be open to the public, but they'd had 55 of these workshops that the council had failed to tell the public they were happening. And these are sort of we rely on the public or the media to come along and keep these guys accountable. You can't do it if you don't know they're happening. And so there's a lot more secrecy that I think happens in local government, and the culture needs to change. I think we need to start taking seriously, what council does, especially like when you mentioned housing. The big infrastructure, whether it's transport, pipes, they do have huge impacts on our lives now, especially those zoning issues. So to just, leave it to the councils themselves and have them self-policing, I don't think is really in the public interest.
Particularly when there seems to be a trend towards doing more public-private partnerships for
Oh, yeah.
infrastructure, and there's nothing more valuable in the country than the valuation on a piece of residential land, a total of $1.6 trillion. So that tends to get people very focused on these things. Bryce, it's wonderful to have you on with a mini hoon on the kaka to talk about these issues. Hope to talk with you again. Ngā mihi nui, ka kite anō.
Cheers. Thanks, Bernard.